Allow yourself to fail. Allow yourself to be a beginner. Allow yourself to not be the best. As long as you're putting your best effort, like there's always room for improvement. So as long as you're putting your best effort and you're giving it all you've got, allow yourself the room for growth. And stop overthinking things. Stop making things a bigger deal than what they are. Hey y'all, it's Megan May and this is Transparency, where we keep it real about our growing pains and all the beautiful moving parts of life that may not be the most glamorous but shape us into who we are today. So if you're ready for some introspection and evolution, go ahead and lock in by hitting the subscribe button. And if anything I say resonates with you, you can leave me a comment and or like so I know we see each other. Okay, so we're gonna take a little break from the self-love topic, which honestly every topic be about self-love to some degree, but the ones where we was focused specifically on the different elements of self-love. And we're going to talk about overthinking, because baby, it is a epidemic. It is a problem, because I feel like we all overthink, and we're different overthinkers. Like, we have the overthinkers that wake up in the middle of the night or probably never fell asleep, and it's 2 a.m. in the morning. You're just thinking about all of what you should have done that day, all of what you have to do the following day. Or you might be an overthinker that replays conversations in your head thinking, I should have said this, or I should have went about this conversation this way, or this situation this way. Or you might be the overthinker that's overanalyzing every part of a decision that you have to make. What if this happened? What if that happens? What if this falls through? What if this person backs out? Just thinking about things that are literally uncontrollable. And so today I want to talk about why we overthink, and most importantly, how we can free ourselves from something that is hurting us more than it is helping us. Okay, so for the sake of this story, of course, there's different situations and circumstances that may cause us to overthink. Some of those things might be very serious circumstances or situations, while others might be literally things that we just tripping about. Like, this is not even that deep. But for the sake of today's episode, we're going to talk about something that I feel like is in between. Like, it's not that deep, but it is that deep. And I feel like it's something that we could all relate to, because whether you're in school or whether you're at work, this situation has probably found you, and the situation or the elements behind the situation are probably going to be things that you can relate to. So let's say you have a presentation, a big presentation, and as soon as you finish putting your slideshow together, you start to think of all of what could happen wrong. What if you have a technical difficulty? What if people don't understand what you're talking about? What if they think your presentation sucks? What if you forget what you're supposed to say? What if there's no solid takeaway and you lose your job or you fail the assignment? You know, thinking of these grand things that could be outcomes that are all negative. No positive outcomes are in your mind at the time, because you're just thinking of all the bad things that could possibly happen and go wrong. Despite you positively preparing for the presentation, despite you knowing exactly what you're talking about, despite you knowing that there's no way that a technical problem could occur, because all you need is a computer and a clicker, and those things are being provided for you. So in the event that that was to happen, there's nothing for you to stress over, because you did not supplement this material. So in the event of thinking about all of what could happen wrong, you try to calm yourself down by telling yourself, oh, it's just nerves, I'll get over it. You probably might do some deep breathing exercises. You might chew on a piece of gum or suck on a mint. You know, all of the things that they say are supposed to calm your nerves down. But do those things really help for you to take yourself out of your head? Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. And what does that look like? That might look like you endlessly looking over your notes, trying to remember everything word for word, even though knowing everything that you're going to say word for word might prove as an inauthentic presentation that people just automatically might check out of, because you're up there sounding robotic. Or you might look in the mirror trying to practice what you're going to say, and you're nitpicking at every little thing that you do, every like, every pause, every smack literally any and everything that you see yourself doing, you have something to say about. Things that probably wouldn't even get picked up by your audience. Or maybe you're changing your outfit 100,000 times because you feel like this isn't flattering, or this looks a certain type of way, or they might think something about me showing up looking like this. You know, doing all of these things that are creating all of this unnecessary pressure within you that does not even add value to the presentation itself. So if it's not adding value to the presentation, what exactly is it doing? It's instilling feelings of doubt and anxiety, which is the last thing you need before you present yourself to the world, before you present yourself to your colleagues, to your boss, to your classmates, to your professor. That's the last thing you need. So why do we do this to ourselves? And how can we change it? So when I began my research of why we overthink, it became apparent to me that overthinking is a byproduct of our subconscious mind. And what does that mean? Well, we know that our brains are pretty much designed to protect us. We've all heard of flight or fight. And so what our brain is doing when we're in this loop of overthinking and just pretty much putting ourselves in a bad predicament of thinking that X, Y, and Z can go wrong is it's trying to protect us from potential dangers. Dangers that may not really be that extreme, but might be something as small as us feeling embarrassed, or us feeling inadequate, us feeling like we're some sort of failure. And I think the process of overthinking, based off of what I'm understanding, it is a byproduct of us being scared of some form of outcome, whether it be fear of failure, fear of making a mistake, fear of being misunderstood. It's coming from fear. And the fear doesn't have to be a real threat. It could be something that stems from your past. Maybe you're thinking of a past experience, a past disappointment, a past letdown of some sort, or maybe it's a time where you really did genuinely fail in the past and you're associating it with this current situation because you feel like they have some form of similarity. Maybe back then you stood in front of a crowd and you forgot what you were supposed to say, and so even though it was years ago and perhaps you've had plenty of other presentations since then, you're scared that this may some way somehow happen again. I think for me personally, my cycles of overthinking stem from unresolved emotions, like me not really knowing how something really made me feel. Like, I think I felt sad from something and I don't want to feel the feeling of sadness again, or I feel like I was overwhelmed by something, I don't want to feel overwhelmed again, or I feel like I let myself down in this situation, I don't want to let myself down again. And so I be thinking of all the different ways that I could prevent this thing from happening again, only to then put myself in a situation where this will likely happen again because that's all I'm thinking about. And I think overthinking can be associated with a coping mechanism because we're pretty much trying to understand the outcomes before they happen and prevent unpleasant outcomes from happening because we don't want to feel the feelings that we're running away from. But a big reason for overthinking that I don't feel like I struggle with, but I know other people in my life struggle with, is perfectionism. We talked about it before, but perfectionism is definitely a culprit of overthinking because you're trying to analyze and reanalyze different outcomes and situations and scenarios because you want them to turn out right. But there really is never a such thing as something turning out right or something being perfect. So you're really putting unnecessary pressure on yourself and depleting yourself of energy that you may need to really shine the way that you could possibly shine in this presentation, in this conversation, or whatever it is that you're overthinking about. And why is that? I think honestly it's because, for the sake of the perfectionism people, I think that's because a lot of people that struggle with perfectionism associate being perfect with being good enough. So In the case of the presentation, you might be going over your notes time and time again endlessly because you want the presentation to be perfect, not really understanding that there are certain factors that are just simply outside of your control that would make your presentation not any less perfect, but a little bit outside of the lines that you're trying to stay within. And it's exhausting to try to think of every outcome and everything that could possibly go wrong. It's exhausting. It takes you out of the moment. You're not able to be present, and you're unable to enjoy what it is that you've worked so hard to accomplish. So now let's talk about the effects of overthinking, which I feel like they are pretty obvious. You're going to be stressed out. You're going to feel anxious. You're going to feel overwhelmed. And obviously, that's taking a lot of mental energy out of you. So you're not going to be able to show up as your best self, or even the bare minimum version of yourself sometimes, because you're literally just in your head playing things back or playing things over and over and over again. And it's just taking so much energy and awareness out of you that you're literally just walking around as a shell of yourself. You're caught up in your head. You can't do anything right. You can't show up for the ones that you love in your life correctly. It's just not anything good that comes from overthinking realistically. But I think what also has to be taken into account is when you're overthinking, you are also stunting your productivity. And this is something that I found to be true for myself, and that's why I want to speak on it. Because, okay, cool, we're going to keep referencing back to our opening scenario of having a presentation. So you're preparing for a presentation, you're overthinking all of the outcomes that could potentially happen when you give your presentation or leading up to your presentation. And in doing that, you're taking away focus that you could be giving into other things. You're taking away confidence that you possibly would have had if you just gave yourself the reassurance that, okay, I prepared correctly, I know I did my research, I've practiced my speech in the mirror, just being authentically myself and allowing myself to have, a little small few flaws here and there, but nothing that's going to be distracting or take away from the overall message of my presentation. And if you are somebody that still focuses on the negative outcomes or all of what's wrong with you, then you're taking away from your productivity because you're not allowing yourself to properly prepare in other ways. What does that mean? You might not be allowing yourself to get an adequate amount of rest. You might not eat. You might not really fuel yourself with what you need to be the best version of yourself when you do show up in that room. You might not work out. Or perhaps you do eat, but you eat a whole bunch of junk food. And so now you have a whole bunch of brain fog. You feel tired. And you're just not able to be your best self. So yes, that is a long-term effect of overthinking. It's just stunting your productivity. Why would you put yourself in a situation where you're unable to shine like you can shine? You can shine in the ways that you desire because you've prepared and you know what you're talking about. But you're just so focused on all of what could go wrong. Why? Why do that to yourself? I've also noticed when I overthink about little things that just don't require so much mental power and I give it all this power, is I also struggle with decision fatigue. So if I know that, let's say, I'm supposed to be doing this presentation, then I'll struggle with like the layout, the color scheme. Oh, do I want to wear something that coordinates with the color scheme of my presentation? Oh, do I want to wear this shoe or that shoe? Is this jewelry distracting? How do I want to do my makeup? Like, I make everything a bigger deal than what it needs to be. And all of that is a result of overthinking. Now I'm not overthinking about my presentation that I'm presenting. I'm thinking about the presentation of my appearance. How am I coming off to these people? I'm getting in my head about whether I'm going to be perceived a certain type of way because I wore this earring over that earring, or I wore this hairstyle over that hairstyle. And I just don't feel like those type of things are that deep. And I don't really struggle with this as much now, but I know like in school I did. But now I don't really struggle with how I look per se, because I just feel like once you look put together and polished, then you're fine. Like, I got these bangles on. If I was going to an actual presentation where I was standing in front of a room, I probably wouldn't wear these bangles because obviously if I move my arm, they're going to make noise, you know? And I talk with my hands a lot. I'm leaning on my chair, so even with me moving my hands, you're not hearing the jingles of my bangles. But realistically speaking, if you look put together, then what else is there to really worry about? If people want to scrutinize you or perceive you in a different type of light because of what you have on, but you know that you're dressed appropriately, you look put together, you look pretty, you look polished, then that's their problem. And that's something that's out of your control. So you shouldn't give all this mental fortitude to trying to please the masses. All you need to do is your job. Are you prepared? Do you look good? Do you smell clean? Do you smell good? All of those things are the only things that matter. Everything else is outside of your control and are, quite frankly, irrelevant. So don't really give too much thought to things that are silly, honestly. Just focus on the things that really matter and focus on the things that are within your control, and everything else, let it go. Okay, so before moving on, I did want to touch on one other like factor of overthinking, or one other scenario where I feel like we overthink a lot as people, as human, as girlies, because I feel like I'm not a man, I can't speak for men, and I really haven't asked any men before making this episode, so maybe that's something I'll do on the back end. But as women, you know, we're in our emotions, in our feelings a lot of the times, and so I think we overthink a lot in our relationships. And where I see this happens, like most of the times, is through communication. So this could be your romantic partner, this could be your siblings, your mom, your dad, whoever. But nonverbal communication, it's easy to misinterpret what somebody is saying unless it's something that's completely cut and dry. If there's any room for your own interpretation to take place, there more than likely will be a whole different interpretation of your words, especially if there's already some underlying conflict. I had this happen to me recently. I texted my managers and they felt like I was talking to them like in a certain type of tone, and I just reread the message 100 trillion times, and I had to get second, third, fourth, fifth opinions because I'm just like, what are you talking about? But it's easy for people to convey things differently than the way that you intended for them to receive it if there is some type of underlying conflict going on. So in your relationships, when you have conflict, do you find yourself overthinking about what did they mean by that? Or why was they looking at me like that? Or why was their body language so standoffish? Why do I feel like there's an issue? I thought the issue was resolved. Like, have you ever had those feelings after, you know, you done closed a case being whatever situation you had where it was like you guys was kind of at odds or not really seeing eye to eye, and then you find yourself pretty much replaying the situation time and time again, and every time you think of this, you think of what you should have said differently, and not differently necessarily in a better way, probably like, oh, them folks was playing with me, so I should have said this to let them know I'm not to be played with. Or, you know, in your relationships with your partner, your spouse, you probably had a situation where y'all was going back and forth about something, and they said something that you took it a certain type of way, and that wasn't the way that they meant it at all. But in the heat of the moment, you don't even know like what exactly their intention was, because you're just thinking like, oh, y'all going at it. Same thing with friends, y'all going at it. You're not really thinking of the way that what you're saying is going to be received. And so the person on the receiving end is taking it however they feel like you intended it because of the certain tone or atmosphere that these words are being shared in. And so there is the process of overthinking on both ends, because as the person that's delivering the message, you're overthinking like, oh my gosh, how was my delivery? Should I say this differently? Or, you know, are they retaliating against me because of something that I said? Is there something that I said that was wrong? Could I have said this better? Should I have added this in? Like, thinking of all these things. Mind you, case is closed. Conversation is dead. But as the receiver, you're probably thinking similar thoughts. Oh, when they said this, I should have responded with that. I should have, walked away then. I should have, just thinking of all of these things that are now irrelevant. Of course, you could pick up the phone, you could pull up and have a conversation if you feel like things are like fixable and they were left unresolved. Then obviously these are options for you. But in actuality, the case is closed. So why are you spending all of this mental energy on something that is already in the past? Is it because you have a habit of misinterpreting words? Is it because you're struggling with like self-judgment, and so you feel like you're being seen in a light that you really just see yourself in, but now you're perceiving that this person, because of something they said or something that they did, might see you in the same light, and so now you're overly critical about everything that happened and that was said in that interaction because of something that's going on within yourself. And a lot of the times, like I said, overthinking comes from our subconscious. So a lot of the times when we're overthinking about what we should have said or what we should have done differently, it's because we're replaying these things in our mind, and it's triggering something that is really like unsettling within ourselves. Again, from your past, maybe from your present, that you just haven't really made peace with. But it's okay, because now we're going to talk about the ways that we can overcome overthinking. So before I even get into how to stop overthinking, a large part of your mental fortitude is being wasted. You are not allowing yourself to have a peace of mind because you're constantly thinking about things that no longer serve you, that are no longer relevant. Before you start thinking, okay, I don't need to stop overthinking, understand that you will be giving yourself so much peace of mind if you just allow things to happen and let go of things when it's time to let go, and be more present so that you can have that peace of mind, that ease, and allowing things to flow the way that they're meant to flow. Like, things are just not meant to be perfect all of the time. So even sometimes when things do happen that we don't really feel a lot of peace or satisfaction with, they were just supposed to happen, and we're going to take those things and apply them in the future. But there's no reason to overthink about what you should have done differently, what you should have said differently, how you could have prepared differently. Like, yes, take the time to reflect, but don't allow it to really just eat you up and consume you when it no longer serves you. So the first thing that I want us to do when we find ourselves overthinking is practice some form of mindfulness practice. This could be going on a walk, or simply just going outside to get some fresh air. This could be taking deep breaths. This could be journaling. This could be coloring. Anything that is going to allow you to come back to the present moment, to really understand where your feet are placed right now, and appreciate where you are right now, physically, mentally, emotionally. But just take some of that heaviness off of you by allowing yourself to just woosah a little bit, because that's all we be needing. When we're sitting here racing through our minds all day long, we really just need that moment to pause, gather ourselves, and release. So that's my first step. And an important reason behind mindfulness practices is because I feel like it allows you to understand that the past is already gone, and there's no need to be anxious about things that are coming up in our future, because like I've been saying throughout this episode, we're not really in control of a lot of the things that we burden ourselves with. Like, we're not in control of so many elements of our future that we are stressed about or that we worry ourselves about. Like, especially when it comes to perception or the way that we're being received, we are not in control of that. You can only do but so much. If people don't want to receive you the way that you intend to be received, if people don't like you, if people think you're stupid, if people don't want to hear what you're talking about, that is not within your control. All you can do is show up as your best self every single day. And of course, sometimes your best self is only going to be like at a 30%, at a 40%, 50%. It's not always going to be at 100%, but control the controllables. You can only do but so much, and everything else that's left out there is for other people to figure out. It's not for you to figure out. It's not for you to think about from sun up to sundown. It's not for you to cry about, worry yourself about. It's out of your control. And that's why mindfulness is so important, because it brings you back to yourself. It helps you to understand that this is what I have control over. This is what my present moment entails. And this is what I could be grateful for. This is where my feet is planted at the moment. This is what I can be grateful for. Gratitude, that's also a mindfulness practice. It's just counting your blessings and understanding, like, okay, even if this goes wrong, this right now is going well, and that's what I'm going to focus on. The second tip that I'm going to say helps me with overthinking is making some type of small action forward. Because like I said, I struggle a lot with decision fatigue, and so I'm always thinking of, what if this is the better option? What if that is the better option? But sometimes it just takes taking some form of action. Like, you don't need to take the best action, because a lot of the time we have the room and the space to make mistakes and to have errors, and it's going to show us and teach us something that's more valuable that we probably wouldn't have gained from any other experience or any other person or anywhere else. So sometimes for the overthinkers that struggle with decision fatigue as well, the best way to remedy that is to just take some form of action. So if you're stressing about whether or not you should send an email that you've been stressing over because you don't know how it's going to be received, just send it and see what the outcome will be. If you're stressing about whether you should do something versus not doing something, or let's be more specific, whether you should work on this project or that project, maybe say, okay, I don't know which one I want to work on, so I'm gonna work on both, but I'm gonna give myself 5 minutes on this and 5 minutes on that, and whichever one I feel like I want to dedicate a little bit more time to, I'll go ahead and dedicate some more time today. Whether you start working on that project to its completion and then you pivot to the other project that you've been putting on the back burner, then cool. But decision fatigue oftentimes does create procrastination within us, and so it's better to just go ahead and choose to do a little bit of one thing versus sitting there thinking about which one of the 2, 3, 4 things you want to go ahead and commit to. Because you could always pivot. You could always start on something, dedicate a certain amount of time to this thing, and then go ahead and focus on this thing. You could do A/B days like we did in school. Sometimes you might feel like, oh, you feel more inspired to pour into this thing, so you're pouring into this thing, and then you say, okay, since I spent 2 hours on this today, tomorrow I'm gonna spend you don't even have to do 2 hours on the next thing. You could really do like 15, 20, 30 minutes, and if you feel inspired to move forward, spend a little bit more time, then go ahead and do that. But that's a way that you could break out of the cycle of procrastination that stems from you overthinking. And the last thing that I feel like helps with overthinking is just understanding that you are human. And I think the theme of this next quarter for me is going to be self-compassion, because I really need to focus on being more compassionate with myself. Self-compassion is very important because I think a lot of other people that's outside of us but in our lives expect certain things from us, and sometimes we stretch ourselves so thin trying to show up in the ways that they're expecting us to show up. And a lot of the times that can leave us feeling depleted, or like we just don't have enough to give ourselves. And that's why it's important to really serve yourself first. But I understand that sometimes that's hard. So in the event that you are overthinking about the various ways that you have to show up in life, remind yourself that you are human and you can only do but so much. And as long as you know that you're giving yourself, or not even giving yourself, but giving your best effort to the world, to the obligations that you feel like you have to uphold to, or whatever it is that you might be actually doing for yourself, as long as you know that you're doing your best, that is literally all that you can do. So why continue stressing? Why continue overthinking about what ifs and what you could have done better? When opportunity presents itself for you to show improvement, go back and analyze what you feel like you could have what you feel like you could have done differently then, but don't overconsume yourself with what ifs. As long as you put your best foot forward and you know that you showed up to the best of your ability and laid it all out, put it on the floor, put it on the table, you did what you were supposed to do, then let that be it. Let that be it. And be okay with, not always doing things to the standard that you may have set. Like, I don't want us to confuse the two. Doing your best doesn't mean that you're always going to hit the stars, because that's what they say, shoot for the stars. Sometimes your best might not take you to the stars, because you need to have room for error to change certain things about yourself. Sometimes the process of doing something and you putting your best in something reveals to you that there are elements of yourself, or there are things about whatever it is that you're pursuing that you are completely ignorant to. And so allow yourself to fail. Allow yourself to be a beginner. Allow yourself to not be the best. As long as you're putting your best effort, like, there's always room for improvement. So as long as you're putting your best effort and you're giving it all you've got, allow yourself the room for growth. And stop overthinking things. Stop making things a bigger deal than what they are. So that is it. That is all. I hope that something I shared with you guys today has resonated with you and that you could apply it in your day-to-day lives. Of course, if you try any of these strategies, whether it be mindfulness, taking imperfect action, or just being a little bit more compassionate with yourself, and you see a change in your day-to-day, or you see a shift in your life by just allowing yourself to be and focus on being present versus being stuck in the past or overthinking about the future. Once you see that shift, please share it with the community so that people can be encouraged to do the same. Of course, our brains are here to protect us, but sometimes overthinking can just be a detriment, and I just don't want anything that we do, anything that we put a lot of focus or a lot of power into, to be a detriment to ourselves. So I hope that you have some takeaways from this that you actually apply in your life. And of course, thank you so much for listening. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys later. Have a great weekend. Toodles.